This video is not intended for children under the age of 13. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today we have a story from the Pathfinder subreddit. Before we begin, I would like to thank @OminousCode for providing the thumbnail. Link to their Twitter below. Without further ado, let's do further. Adventures in the Desert, by user Hella Shaggy. So we're playing Pathfinder, a campaign set in a desert. The party is as follows: me, a half-orc fighter named Avir. I really hate gnolls. As a campaign trait I get +1 to attack them. A half-orc cleric named Fatal Bet Haroon. A human inquisitor named Yul or something like that. He lasts roughly 5 minutes. Let me know if he comes across as that guy. A tiefling rogue who was also a slave. He doesn't need water and can survive each day on a handful of sand. His name is Erebus. Finally, for now, is Hermit, the alchemist, who belongs to the guy who names his characters with not names. We all started at level 1. We begin having joined up with a caravan. Me, because I've heard there'll be plenty of gnolls to kill. Hermit and Fatal, because they're looking for their sister, don't ask. Inquisitor, to start/spread his terrible religion to the gnoll god or whatever he worships. Erebus was just here to earn his freedom. Long story short, the Inquisitor immediately begins to piss off the noble that runs the caravan, which, out here in the wastes of the desert, means she's the only nobility that currently matters. It gets worse when the NPC fortune teller's cart catches flame. I pick up an entire barrel of water to put the fire out, a feat accomplished because I have 19 strength and the cleric cast Ant Hall on me. Erebus goes to help move the other carts on the caravan away from the fire. Fatal and Hermit are with me, and start tossing buckets of water onto the fire. The Inquisitor? He stands by watching, while everybody but the slave, who's helping to keep the fire from reaching other carts, is putting out the fire. When the owner of the caravan, who is legitimate royalty, also starts tossing buckets of water at the fire, the Inquisitor demands a favor in exchange for helping. She promptly ignored him. She did grant him a favor, however, she spared his life. He didn't complain when she banished him from the caravan and he was forced to roll up a new character. Makes me iffy on their whole, that guy, status. Lady Alma, the noble we're working for, rewards us with a meal for stopping the fire, then asks us politely to investigate. Her logic was that, since we're new, it couldn't have been us. So we start investigating. The fortune teller died in the fire. The only things that escaped were 50 gold pieces and a single tarot card, the Cyclone, a card that slapped Erebus in the face while the fire was still raging. Erebus himself investigated the ruined card. I think Hermit and Fatal went with him, and went about eating embers all the while because he's a tiefling and because he can, thanks to race traits. By the time he's done, he meets me next to the most suspicious weirdo in the caravan, Dashki, a man hired to hunt gnolls and nothing else. He smells terrible, doesn't understand social norms, and speaks of animals nobody in the party has heard of, pugwampies. Rat-like humanoids that he says worship gnolls. I decided immediately that I hate them. Dashki said they cause terrible luck and they must have caused the fire. Natural 20 cents motive check tells us he isn't lying. So I decide to stay with Dashki to talk about killing gnolls. I was a butcher, so his smell doesn't bother me when I've worked around the smell of chopped meat for years. The rest of the party decide to question the other suspects. They all point the finger at Dashki, mostly as he's a creep who tries to peek on Lady Alma when she's in the privacy of her own tent. Nobody challenges him though, because Alma keeps him on exclusively for hunting gnolls, and he's extremely good at it. Meanwhile, the caravan's doctor insists Erebus eats a sandwich. Having eaten only sand for the past, say, 30 years. He's healthy but emaciated. He also occasionally bled from his pores. Ew. When we're done investigating, we speak to Lady Alma. Everything is adding up to Dashki, although I speak in his defense. Yes, he's still a creep. We're then sent to scout for the Pugwampis. Lady Alma trusts Dashki enough to believe he knows what he's talking about. Besides, it was a great chance for us to keep an eye on him. We do find a Pugwampi. It's stolen a goat we were asked to bring back. The favorite goat of the local animal herders. Erebus, who promised to get the goat back, decides he's going for it. Only one problem. The Pugwampi is outputting an aura of unluck, and the goat is tied up in the middle of a 25 feet ring of cacti. By that I mean there's a 25 feet thick layer of cactus going in a solid ring around the goat. We'd learn later that Pugwampis have immunities. I curse myself for not buying quilted cloth armor, because now our emaciated friend has to duck and dodge through the cacti. We realize instantly why our GM is snickering every time he gets pricked and saying "oh how unlucky" in an exaggerated tone. The myth of Pugwampis being unlucky is real. Erebus gets to the goat and catches it before it can escape the rope holding it and kill itself in the cactus patch, but he's fighting a Pugwampi now. Eventually, the stand-in character belonging to the guy who owned the Inquisitor draws an arrow and shoots the Pugwampi, exploding it with damage in the teens while it had like 3 HP. I'm going to pause the story for a moment here. I bet a lot of you haven't heard of Pugwampis, so here's a quick rundown for your sake. A Pugwampi is basically what you get when the Feywild gets drunk and decides to grant sentience to a horrible cross between a chihuahua and a giant rat. This Fey creature is so loathsome that not even Lamashtu, the literal demonic mother of beasts, wants anything to do with them. They're mean, they're ugly, and they emit an aura of unluck. They know they're unlucky, and they absolutely love using it to cause accidents. It's practically a competitive sport to them, a sick pastime for a summer's evening. Mechanics-wise, this manifests as having to roll 2 d20s whenever a situation calls for a d20 roll, such as an attack roll, a skill check, or a saving throw, and taking the lower of the two results. With that out of the way, let's return to the story. We return the goat and are thanked, paid 200 gold pieces, and commissioned for different tasks. The cleric is charged with filling a 55-gallon drum with water using Create Water. I then had to assist with pushing the full drum wherever it needed to go. The alchemist was tasked with making 7 Endure Elements potions for Lady Alma, each with a 24-hour effect, thus ensuring a cozy week of leisure for Lady Alma. Then we retired for the evening. I decide to wear my hot weather clothing instead of my armor, ironically on the one day I needed my armor. We'd proven our use in combat and were thus sent ahead of the caravan again and again to set up new places for the caravan to park and rest. Lady Alma wanted to move fast because of the fire, she didn't feel safe after it. On our way to one of the requested locations, an old monastery, we came across an adventurer, unconscious from an encounter with Pugwampis. The Pugwampis thankfully had already left. Our healer nursed him back to health. This was the Inquisitor's new character, and immediately I hated him. He spoke at about 50 words a second, blurted out complete nonsense, and was just generally an annoyance and disruption. Congrats, we now had an insane investigator whose name I refused to learn. We eventually arrive at the abandoned monastery dedicated to Serenre. We were told it's dedicated to Serenre, and yet all of us are too stupid to figure out that the main statue within it depicts Serenre. Erebus goes in and does rogue things. Before we enter after him, he returns to tell us there are baboons asleep in the rafters. Who else but the new investigator screams, "What? Baboons? I hate baboons. Damn baboons." And a string of other nonsense/curses. The GM then said the ruckus wakes up the baboons. You hear screeching as they come down. I face the baboons with my axe of butchering, a third-party axe the GM recommended to me when I was making a butcher, both because of the name and the fact that it requires 19 strength to wield properly. I didn't get a chance to use it sadly, as the baboons leapt onto me and began biting. I decided on my turn I would roar in anger, and I did, with a natural 20 to my intimidate check. The baboons began to flee. We slaughtered them easily. But all that noise woke up the sleeping pugwampies, or as the GM put it, now the nest is alerted to your presence. I am told my roar was so loud, that the monastery crumbled in places and bits of the ceiling came loose. Erebus chased the one pugwampi we saw upstairs. Due to terrible luck, he ended up piercing himself on bones and broken glass. Erebus and, I believe, Hermit managed to kill all but one of the first pugwampis we find. Only 2 more encounters for the rest of the place. We're checking the basement next session, so perhaps another encounter is to be had. Next session. We enter the basement and we get attacked by, I don't know what they're called. Imagine hummingbirds with 4 wings and proboscises. Well, I get attacked. One of them passes my CMD and sticks me. I take 1 constitution damage and am thoroughly pissed. The investigator is laughing and cracking puns, meanwhile I'm now so angry my face is red. Investigator dang near stabs me with his long spear while trying to hit the tiny-sized enemy. Hermit misses, fatal hits but doesn't dislodge the bird. I managed a grapple check and removed it, then turned to the investigator and threatened him by saying, "You sound like you want to share needles." I almost did it, but the GM said no to PvP, which is good on him. The bug bird things then attack Hermit and Fatal. Investigator kills the one on Fatal and Hermit handles the other as I snap the last one's neck so hard its head comes off. I decided to keep it for future threatening of the investigator. In the last room, we find the pugwampi nest. A massive superstructure of junk barely holding up the already weakened ceiling. The alchemist mentions bombing it. The GM promptly informs us that doing so would bring down the whole building on top of us. The rogue mentions trying the same, but with a grappling hook. We're then told, if you bring down the roof in one room, it'll disturb the rest of the monastery enough to destroy everything and kill you. We decide not to bomb the nest. A pugwampi then jumped onto the altar and started giving us the bird. Some pugwampis hang from an old chandelier and started shooting us with tiny bows, literally launching toothpick arrows. The others perform archery if they can, otherwise, we wait. I decided that, as a fighter and a half-orc, that I am not patient enough for this BS and I run towards the nearby ladder up to the rafters. Hermit follows me, intent on assisting, bless his heart. Fatal and Erebus go to handle the pugwampi on the altar. I can't say what the investigator was doing, probably being so annoying and cracking stupid one-liners that I ignored him. He made one suggestion that I listened to: cut the rope holding the chandelier. It wasn't touching the superstructure and the GM said it wouldn't cause a collapse. So I did, of course, and the investigator took full credit for the 3 pugwampis who died in the resulting fall. But now I was faced with a real enemy. The others below handled that last pugwampi, but the leader of the pugwampis, a fat and grotesque one with a name I can't recall, came up and shouted at me in Knoll, "How dare you disturb my nest, our home?" I asked the GM, free action. Can I ask the cleric to translate something? She speaks Knoll, and while I hate their language, I want to get a message across. Our GM okayed the idea, and the cleric translated. He says he's going to wear your fat ugly skull as a belt buckle. I then advanced, Hermit following close behind me. Meanwhile the Pugwampie wannabe king, still wearing a crown of rat teeth and bird skulls, threatens me. GM asks, how much does your axe weigh? I smile, knowing it is a tempting asunder. I had witnessed these jerks sunder with their shrieks before. I even bought Erebus a new short sword to replace the one they broke. Just in case though, I carried 2 weapons. Every butcher needs a mallet for tenderizing, right? I was still delighted at the response. I answered that my axe weighs 25 pounds, and the GM said, never mind, that weighs too much. Now laughing, I charged the chief and he attempted to take out my knee. I missed my first attack, he didn't. I paused, now missing quite a bit of health, and said, by the way guys, I'm close to dying. Hermit. This GD legend, sneaks a healing extract down my throat, and heals all but 1 point of the damage I had taken. I smile. The king of the Pugwampie performs a dirty trick. I succeed at a fortitude save by a significant amount and stay standing. I stop smiling, and so does the Pugwampie king. Keeping true to my promise, I roll to hit. GM gives me a +2 moral bonus, and, despite having to roll twice and take the lower roll, I succeed to hit and do enough damage to cleave the chief in 2. His skull is intact. As I do, I roll Intimidate. GM gives me a +10 on top of my current modifier. I rolled 31. The rest of the Pugwampies that accompanied their king flee in terror. I'm happy, I'm getting that belt buckle, and I might just stab the investigator. Maybe. With that, our story comes to an end. If you enjoyed watching this, be sure to like and subscribe.